We've come up with the new brand promise. We've got a visual sense of what we are going to look like. We present this to a small group of executives. It's going really well, and I'm feeling really good about it. And we get to the end, and there's a little bit of a, you're kind of waiting. And the CEO and the founder look at each other, and the CEO, Charlie, turns and he says, well, I think we should consider changing the name of the company as long as we're doing this. And I think it's one of the few moments in my career where I wasn't able to keep a composed face. Afterwards, he goes, I bet you thought you were going to get fired, weren't you? And I was like, yeah, that's a pretty high risk proposition for a CMO.
Welcome back to CMOs Unscripted. This is the show where I give you direct access to the world's top B2B CMOs. Guys, this is no scripts, no fluff, no spin. What we have here are candid conversations about the decisions and the challenges and the strategies that are shaping the future of marketing leadership. I'm your host, Lisa Martin. Great to see you back. And I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today. She is a highly distinguished CMO. In fact, a top 100 B2B CMO who spent more than 3 decades, if you can believe it, helping companies to grow and to evolve and to differentiate in competitive markets. She was just named recently to the B2B CMO 100 list. And what that does is it honors this elite group of marketing executives they're really redefining leadership. They're driving business outcomes and really elevating the role of marketing to the C-suite. Please welcome Lynn Lucas, the CMO of Everpure. Lynn, it's great to have you.
Oh, Lisa, it is fantastic to be back again. I'm so excited for this conversation, and thank you for the warm introduction.
Absolutely. And congratulations again on the recognition recently. That is awesome. We've had quite a few of the top 100 CMOs on the show. But guys, today, Lynn and I, we're going to be talking about something that's really, really challenging. Probably one of the toughest challenges that a CMO can face, and that's a rebrand. Rebranding a company from the ground up. A lot of companies talk about rebrands, maybe thinking of it as like a visual refresh, but some moments require really rethinking the company from the ground up. Well, Everpure recently went through that journey. So, Lynn, some people think, like I said, rebrand starts with a logo. What was happening inside what was formerly Pure Storage, which I've known and followed for years, that made you guys realize this is bigger than that?
Yeah, so great question, Lisa. So just to give the audience a little bit of background, as we record now, I'm about 2.5 years in, and I had been here a little over a year. And what we were working on with the executive team is our strategy to really expand and drive into what we call higher level buyers, right? So for CMOs, that's going to be the VP, the C level. And candidly, as I looked with my brand and corporate marketing team, we said, wow, Pure Storage, we have a great brand. We have an 84 NPS. That is the highest of almost anyone out there, including higher than companies like Apple. But we're kind of looking around and we said, wow, we're feeling a little dated. Like the brand is not expressing the value proposition that the company overall is bringing. And it's just not looking fresh anymore. It's looking too much still like that early stage, more startup feel. And so we started a project at that point.
What I loved when I read the press release a few months ago, what it seemed to me was Pure Storage pivoted from reshaping storage. So you're now defining the future of data management. And one thing that also jumped out was it felt more like a category exit. I don't know if that's fair.
Yeah, I think as opposed to exit, what I would say is the category has been expanding. So for those listeners who may not know Pure Storage history, founded 15 years ago, we are the leader in all flash storage, innovated by our founder. And we have no intention of exiting that part of the market. But I joined, and the goal had been to expand farther, as you said. Pure Storage, also little known secret, although much more widely known now, is one of the leading SaaS companies out there. So we are a software company, and our software provides enterprises with deep insights into their data. And so we had been expanding into data management. And so really, as we worked with our founder and our CEO, the catalyst for this was, how do we expand our category? And we need to keep all the goodness of our current fan base, but we are trying to reach those new buyers. And so the marketing team, led by my VP of brand and corporate marketing, we embarked on this project to really not just repaint the walls, but really, how do we step back and really rethink what is our brand proposition, or sometimes it's called the brand statement, the brand promise to the market. And boy, lots of twists and turns, which I think we're going to get into as we talk about that today.
Yeah. What I also noticed in terms of that pivot in the press release, against like beginning of the year, was that the testimonials. I love the testimonial because it really, those are authentic. But what I noticed was that storage wasn't the feature anymore. These leaders, like the CEO of Commvault, who I've interviewed before, they were talking about things like growth, right? AI, business outcomes, strategic values. You really saw and heard that validated. So you mentioned kind of feeling, so were there certain catalysts within the organization or from the partner base or the customer base that led you guys to consider this full rebrand?
Yeah. And if I just tell a little story about it, I'll give the readers here a little inside baseball on how this works. So, classic, work. We have a wonderful agency that we work with. We've done all the exec interviews. We've come up with the new brand promise, which is based on our strategy to reach these higher level buyers and to really expand our category to data management. We've got a visual sense of what we are going to look like. We present this to a small group of executives, again, the founder and the CEO. It's going really well, and I'm feeling really good about it because, a rebrand is one of the most high risk things a CEO can do. And we get to the end, and there's a little bit of you're kind of waiting, and the CEO and the founder look at each other, and the CEO, Charlie Giancarlo, I'm sure you've talked to him before, turns and he says, well, I think we should consider changing the name of the company as long as we're doing this. And I think it's one of the few moments in my career where I wasn't able to keep a composed face. And I think I did this because the founder teases me now. And he said afterwards, he goes, I bet you thought you were going to get fired, weren't you? And I was like, yeah, that's a pretty high risk proposition for a CMO. But really the rationale here is to come back to your question is, our platform, what we call now the Everpure platform, we have been targeting and speaking and being very successful with now the VP level because, candidly, right, storage, beginning of the IT industry, it's a 60-year-old category. And for most IT or C-level leaders, they would go, I don't need to think about that, right? I mean, it's just something that's a commodity.
Exactly.
That has never been the way that Everpure has approached this. Never, in fact, the exact opposite way. And I think it's really coming, to bear right now because of AI. We can get into that later. So candidly, the sales teams had been having success when they could have a one-on-one kind of an interaction and get to the VP or the C level. But the challenge is that obviously we need to do that at scale. Yeah. And if they didn't have a prior relationship, they were not getting in the door because we did qualitative interviews and with people that did not know us. And candidly, a lot of the qualitative feedback was, I don't know if I need to meet with a company with storage in its name. And so it was one of the reasons, but not the only reason, that the CEO and founder felt that we should research, is this the time to also change the company's name?
Well, you mentioned the word risk, you mentioned the word commodity, and that's really important here because there is risk. There's so much brand equity. There still is with the rebrand, but this one, you guys really hit the mark. Everpure, what I love is you retained the recognizable pure, but you also added ever, which connects to evergreen, continuous innovation. When CMOs are approaching something like this of a rebrand, so that brand equity, one, isn't lost, it's maintained, and then it's grown, and two, you're listening to C-levels that don't necessarily know you. What do you think are some of the common mistakes that CMOs make when they're evaluating? Do we just refresh the logo or do we do a full rebrand?
Yeah, I think it is a great question. And I will tell you that I've been just so blessed in this company and to work with these leaders because they're so not just open-minded, but it's part of the innovation here at the company is to press that. So I think first mistake, and I've had a couple of conversations with other CMOs since this, is do not approach this unless you are aligned with the business strategy.
That's it.
So this is not a marketing initiative. The brand is the promise to the market. That's your customers, that's your partners, that's your employees, that's your investors. And it has to be treated as one of the most important assets that a company has. And in that vein, it has to be aligned with the business strategy and where the business sees itself going. If it is approached as we're just feeling like we're not fresh anymore, I think most oftentimes that at the end of the day will end up not resonating in the market. And I think we've all seen examples of that, both in B2B and consumer. So number one thing is make sure that you're approaching this as CMOs should in almost everything we do is how is this advancing the business strategy?
100% agree because rebranding, it should solve that business problem, not a marketing problem. Otherwise, you probably create more risk there. But naming, it's probably a lot harder than visual identity. But what was that process like? I mentioned kind of what you stuck there with Pure, with Evergreen. How did you approach the renaming process? And who were the key stakeholders besides Charlie, the CEO, Cause? Who really was invested in this is our brand identity growing and expanding?
Yeah, great question. And I will say I've not had the experience of doing this before, and actually it's quite rare in B2B to do a company rename that's not related to an acquisition. So we enlisted a great naming agency that had a lot of experience, and we really approached this in a very structured, systematic way. So although I had, again, very forward executives that were like, we think this is the time to explore this, we said, let's step back and let's do research. So in brief, we did research both with our existing customers and non-customers. And we did it at both levels. We did it with our current fans. And then we also on purpose did interviews with VPs and CIOs. And we did it through a third party, so it was neutral.
Right.
And we got really good insights about where they saw the equity in the current name. And we explored categories of how it might expand in that process. So we could bring back data to the executives that said, here's where the equity is. Here's where the current brand, we actually went through a very logical evaluation that said, how far could we get the current brand to stretch? And we found, honestly, in the research that it wouldn't stretch. So that really cemented, let's go through this process. And then after that, we went through a very structured process with the naming agency, and we did have 3 North Stars.
Okay.
So one North Star was we knew that we had to keep Pure in the name. That was the equity. And that came through loud and clear in the research. Even folks that didn't know us really liked that name. Pure has this great vibe with people
Oh,
that
yes.
is unique. The second North Star was the name had to express where we were going.
Yes.
And we didn't know what that meant, but we knew that it needed to feel like it was something that represented, and this is a tough one because a brand 10 to 15 years. So
Yeah.
thinking through how this would work over the next 10 to 15 years.
Yes.
And then the third was that it had to work with both audiences. And by that, I mean, it had to work for our current fans, and we are still very successfully selling storage platforms to those individuals. It also had to work for an executive. So it had to work for the C-level.
Right.
So we approached that. The naming agency did 2 rounds with us, a very structured approach where we essentially voted based on the criteria, blind voting, meaning we couldn't see each other's votes.
Okay.
Kicked out some names, did a second round. Then really the hard part is in this day and age of naming, you can't end up with one. And so you have to end up with probably about 6 names in order to survive the legal and the trademark and the digital diligence.
Of course, yes.
Yes. And to your question of who was involved, in this case, because we are a public company, actually it was only about 4 executives plus myself that knew that we were going through this process. And so we had a favorite, which was Everpure, but we had to have about 5 other names in case the legal and the trademark diligence did not prove favorable to us. And fortunately, because it was our favorite, Everpure did work and crossed all those thresholds. So
you mentioned this was your first time doing a rebrand, and I've known you as CMO at many companies we've interviewed before.
First time and probably only time doing a rebrand with a company rename. I had done rebrands before at the last couple of companies, but not with such a dramatic change which involved the name, and that is just takes it to a whole new level. When you start to consider the massive impact that it has, first and foremost, on your employees.
Yes, I want to ask you about that too. But what surprised you the most during this process? You mentioned the word acquisition. I do want to get to that because it was announced, the rebrand with an acquisition. But what was most surprising in a good way or a not so good way about this process that you think other marketing leaders, I want you to take this away.
So, I think one of the things that I really didn't understand, I mean, it's kind of intuitive, but when you were going through the process, and our naming agency was great about this, is how negatively our brains are wired. And so they really had this very structured process that I would recommend to any CMO, whether naming a company or a product, where they really, and we have a very engineering forward executive team that really worked in this environment of first educating us on literally our brain is wired to be negative about the first thought, but especially about naming. To also, so that led to we will present names, no reaction, no discussion, and then literally a Google sheet per person that only that person could see, scoring 4 attributes on 1 to 5, and no discussion. And that was very purposeful because all names are taken. All names in the world are taken. This is so true. It didn't matter really what they came up with, especially if you're trying not to do a made up name. And by that, I mean, think of cars like Acura or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
if it is not a made up name, there really is zero possibility that it's free and clear. It really is. There is nothing like that anymore in the world. So you have to, the human brain will quickly go to, oh, I've heard that before, or it sounds consumery, or this sounds like something, that's not in our space. And so that was so important that we adhere to that and really stick to our criteria. And I tell you, we're using it now internally for some of our product naming because it really helps smooth what is an emotional process.
That's it. Yes. It's a psychological process. It's emotional. But it seems like the way that you did it was very neutral, as you said. Everyone got those in the room got a chance to say what they wanted to say anonymously, because a name is really a strategic asset, right? This is not a creative exercise. But I do want to get back to the acquisition because you did an acquisition. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to reinforce on that. And that is so true. It is a strategic asset for your company. Yes. And at the company level, it's for the next 15 years. Yes. So the acquisition, sorry.
Yes. And how did that acquisition, tell the audience what it was, and how did it really reinforce this evolution?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So we had expanded into data management the year before, and that's the vision for what Everpure can do. And especially in this age of AI, we are storing all this critical data. We know more about that data and can know more about that data than most any other solution in the IT world. If you think about it, data today is most likely trapped under an application, whether that is an application in someone's data center or a SaaS application. And you've got those silos of data. We have a enterprise data cloud architecture that allows an organization to basically create a virtual cloud of data where we can see all of the data. And that is so critical with AI because AI is only as good as the data that it's running on. And if that data lacks context or is old, then you can get the wrong answers. And we have all experienced that, I'm sure, with hallucination. So One Touch is a company that has been known mostly in the data security space, but really their core technology is about automatically discovering, classifying, and creating the context relationships of data across any data set, whether that data is on premises or in a public cloud or in a SaaS application. So this acquisition expands our ability to provide organizations with the context and the understanding about all of their data. And when I say all, I mean not what we are storing. We would love customers to store that data on the Everpure platform, but this is for any data that they have independent of where it is. And so that really was an incredible proof point for the rebrand. And that was like the cherry on top. And I urge a CMO who's looking at something like this, see if there is some moment like that in the business that can really amplify the brand and the value to the market.
So rebuilding marketing, you mentioned that few knew that you were undertaking this new value proposition really bolstered by the acquisition. But what was internal adoption like before, after? What was the vibe and how did it evolve?
Yeah, so important. So while we started out small, I'll just give you a stat. I put into ChatGPT how many public companies greater than $1 billion have changed their company name in the last 20 years, not due to acquisition. And let's just say the number is well under 5, and the top 2 answers were Meta and Alphabet. And I'm like,
oh
I'm
my
not
gosh,
in that category.
Wow. Right?
Yeah. So It's a massive undertaking to do this as a public company because there are so many legal and investor and employee implications.
Sure. Yeah.
So the first thing that we did is once we had the go ahead is we gathered a small group of folks, and it started very much so with our employee communications team, because I know that if the employee base rejects the brand, it's all over. So we worked very closely with them to really, we of course couldn't tell the employees, but to really craft a very detailed plan around how we were going to introduce the brand internally, multiple touch points. We created training for all the employees that was available on day one. We also know that here at Everpure, our employees really look to Cause, our founder. And so we really leveraged his voice in that training to help people understand, why are we making this change? And it really is part of his own ethos of pushing and innovating and not being static.
Yeah.
Then, of course, we had to have IT, legal. We eventually had to pull in folks from our sales enablement organization, our partner organization. I mean, you name it, everything is touched eventually. Finance, every organization has some need to understand what the brand is. So although we wanted to keep it tight, I will say that by the time we were about a month out, we probably had more than 100 people that had to be read in order to execute this, which I think the team did very flawlessly on day one.
Give us a quick soundbite. How long, approximately, does a process like this with a public company take? Are we talking quarters, years? Because obviously time is of the essence, especially with AI.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is going to depend on your executive team. So we had a very fast-paced schedule, and I will tell you that from the day they asked us to look at it to the day we decided was only 6 months. So that's pretty fast, given, and that was after all the legal diligence and everything. So that was very fast. And then the next quarter was about the execution. So about 3 quarters. We had done all the other groundbreaking work, though, on the brand promise before that. So if you put all of that in context, it was about 15 months.
Okay. Wow. And you mentioned one of the catalysts was we want to evolve our buyer audience. How has that transpired in just the last few months alone?
Oh, the reception has been fantastic. So you mentioned this early on. So one of the things that I wanted to do was also show the sponsorship of our partner ecosystem,
which is huge. Yes.
That was also in some ways a risk, but in speaking to Charlie, it's like, I really think you've had lots of conversations with these executives. They love where we are going and how it helps our joint solutions to market.
Yes.
So we incorporated that. And so that was the first taste, I would say, of the reception with a few of those partners. But honestly, the reception outside the market or outside of Everpure has been just fantastic. I would advise CMOs come up with your brand metric dashboard, of course, to do this.
Next question.
So we measured that based on sentiment. We measure it on reach. We measure, though, what's our web traffic and our web engagement for those buyers. And then, of course, just the media and the analyst sentiment. We had some fantastic coverage, including my favorite quote was around how this is not a repaint of the brand. This is a strategic move for where the company is going. And so that really has been the sentiment, but I just reported out to the executive staff about 90 days in. And what is fantastic is we see the continued uptake in web traffic from the new personas and the engagement. That is what is really exciting to us.
I love that. It's the momentum. I can feel it through StreamYard here. But I think what I'm hearing among many things, knowledge bombs you're dropping, is that the launch isn't the finish line. It's really the starting line. So a little bit of few minutes more here, rapid fire question. What is you talked about some of the things that surprised you. What do you think is the biggest lesson that you learned, that your team learned from this endeavor?
Well, I would say one of the biggest lessons, and we've barely touched on this, is in the age of AI, how do you also do this successfully?
Yeah.
And it is a really massive undertaking. And we only switched the company domain in the beginning of May.
May. Okay.
Of May. So we launched this February 23rd. On May 5th, we switched the company domain to everpuredata.com. And that amount of effort from my AEO SEO team and the web team to transfer and make sure we have the brand equity and we don't plummet. You will see a dip, but that we don't plummet. That was so much effort. I had not envisioned, especially for a company of our tenure, the number of pages, the number of links, the number of terms.
Of course, yeah.
An enormous undertaking to ensure. And we're really pleased. Our brand search terms are up almost 50% year over year. And almost half of them are for our new name. And that is about 3 to 6 months ahead of schedule from what we can gather from other industry stats. So don't underestimate the amount of effort it takes to get those LLMs and understanding you if you are going to undertake something like this.
Well, I think what you've also demonstrated is that not everything has to be live on launch day. Was that something that you knew? Did agencies advise you, or you knew in advance, this is a massive undertaking under the hood, but we're going to go forward with this anyway, not wait till May to switch everything over?
Yeah, we really advised our executives that this is a year-long effort after. So we picked kind of an MVP, almost like a product team would.
Yep.
What do we need to have on day one? And then really said, in order to do this well, we need to take this in a phased approach. I think that has gone really well. And if we had not done that, we would have really probably hurt the brand, because the amount of effort to really do this at a quality level and keep our customer, our partner, and our employee experience high is no small undertaking. I will tell you one other little thing that we discovered along with LinkedIn, who's been a fantastic partner, but I mentioned that very few companies have done this, especially at this scale.
Right.
So turns out transferring your 500,000 plus followers from one company profile to another profile hadn't been done before. So that also took us and LinkedIn.
Wow.
They were fabulous partners. We didn't think that would be hard. Well, it turns out that LinkedIn said they've not done this at this scale. And so
oh my gosh, wow.
It took almost a month, and I will say X was about the same.
Okay.
So we broke some new ground with some of our fabulous social media partners.
I see a book in your near future, Lynn. But one thing, this will air after Accelerate, which is coming up in a couple of weeks in end of June. Doing the major rebrand at the same time as continuing the Accelerate brand, what do you want them to walk away from Everpure Accelerate, the first one with that name, with this event in 2026?
So this is such a good point. So we are so excited. We did the rebrand, and then actually the following Monday, we went to our sales kickoff, and we purposely planned that so that 4 days after the rebrand, we were able to give our entire sales team an in-person experience with the new brand, because they are some of our closest ambassadors.
Absolutely.
And that was amazing. Accelerate, our annual user conference, is our first real in-person touch point with our US customers and partners. So we are so thrilled to bring this experience to them. And what I'm hoping for is what they see is what they've always seen with Pure, but with a fresh take on it, that we are innovating for them, that we are exciting, that we are ever changing. That is part of, as you pointed out, the name Everpure. We are ever innovating, ever changing to keep up and to stay ahead of their business needs. And so we have a fabulous set of experiences planned for them live in Vegas. And then in the fall, we will be taking that show on the road, as we always do. And I'll be going to many of those sites, and I can't wait to see it in some non-English speaking countries as well.
Yes. It's going to feel electric. I've covered Accelerate many times. It's going to feel awesome. But Lynn, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. You know, we've done recordings before, but I think one of the biggest takeaways that I've gotten from this conversation is it's really about aligning a company's identity with where it's going next. You mentioned the next, 10 to 15 years, but I appreciate your willingness to kind of pull back the curtain on the strategy, the risks, the realities, the lessons learned of doing something at this scale, which LinkedIn had never done. We're talking the likes of Meta and Alphabet. That's amazing. And I know that there are a ton of existing CMOs, prospective CMOs, young marketers who will learn from this experience. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's been such a pleasure to be with you again, and I've enjoyed sharing what we've learned.
Awesome. I'll look for the book soon. And I want to thank all of you for watching this episode and listening wherever you're finding it. We hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't yet subscribed on YouTube to CMOs Unscripted, please do. And if you feel that you have a marketer or a business leader who'd be a good candidate for the show, let us know. You can learn more about Everpure is it everpuredata.com?
Yes, that is our domain. We
and
didn't
on X
get
as
into
well.
it, but you will find us at Everpure. If you just start typing it into the search bar, we come up. So.
Excellent. Again, Lynn, thank you so much. Thanks, audience. We'll see you again next time.